So you may be talking to someone on the phone referencing some information on your computer, and all of a sudden your screen cuts out on you and you find yourself having to log back into the computer so that you can get that information in front of you to continue the conversation, which seems like it's taking forever because you're on that important phone call.
Oh God!
And in this video I'm going to show you how to view and change your power settings on your Windows 10 computer, so stick around. A lot of power settings in here, and some of them can affect more than one thing, so it's important if you watch through the whole video here and get a good understanding of what all these options are. Let's have a look at my screen. So you want to go through your start button and go to the settings cogwheel, up to system, down to power and sleep. There's options here for cutting out the screen and when to go to sleep, but we'll go over to additional power settings. And here you may have more than one option, and you can change the plan settings for any one of these. You may have some, like if you were to go to create a power plan, which is something else you can do. You can choose between balanced, power saving, and high performance, and it doesn't matter what you choose, you can always modify them, so you can call it whatever you want and go into next, choose some settings here, but don't worry about changing anything there. You can just go to create, and then you can go back into change the settings and change them from there. Let's go into the balanced and change the plan settings here. So you'll see the same familiar information that we saw earlier for how long to turn off the display and how long before the computer goes to sleep. And if you're on a laptop, you'll have the options as well between battery and when plugged in. If you're using a desktop computer, you're only going to have the one option, which is always plugged in. We want to go into change advanced power settings. This is where we can really get into all the information in here. So there's three main things that we want to look at first, especially with the computer screen cutting out. You may have the hard drive turning off, going to sleep, and even the display. So let's have a look at the hard drive first. The defaults may be different again for you depending on which manufacturer who built this computer, and I've changed these over time, so I don't even recall what the defaults all are, but it's good for you to look at these and understand what it means. So the hard drive itself can turn off after a set amount of time, which is completely independent of how long before it goes to sleep. So the hard drive is what has all your information on it, and it will basically put itself to sleep and write everything to a special area on the disk so it can power off and save power. So when it's on battery, you may have a certain amount of time before it goes off, versus when plugged in, if you have a laptop, you'll have the two options, like I said. So everything will have two options for the most part, for plugged in versus on battery, if it's a laptop. So you may want to change these settings. You just click on the amount of time, and you can scroll up and down or type in a number. If you type in 0 and tab out of there, go to another setting. 0 is never. So if that doesn't work for you, just scroll up and down, and you can go down all the way below 1, then it turns to never. That's the hard disk. Let's have a look at, maybe we'll jump to display first. It's a little bit easier and shorter to look at. Turning the display off, very straightforward. How long before your screen times out? Battery and plugged in. That's it. Sleep now. There's 4 options in here to understand. If we look at sleep, hybrid, and hibernate, between these 3 options here, you have the options for how long before that kicks in. So it's important to know the difference between each one of these. The sleep option, it basically keeps whatever's in memory while the computer is running still in memory, and it puts the computer into a low power state. So it's still on and running, but it's just using very minimal power. With a laptop, it can save you a little bit of battery juice, but it's still going to be draining power. Option, that actually takes what's in the memory and loads it to your hard drive, so that way it can actually shut your computer right down, completely saving the power, because there'll be absolutely no power draw coming through the computer. The hybrid sleep, that gives you the best of both, because with the sleep, because it keeps it in memory, the computer will come back on fast. But with the hibernate, it writes the memory to the hard drive, which means it has to go back to the hard drive to load what was in memory back into memory, and that takes some time. With the hybrid, it does both, so that way you'll have the benefit of the computer having everything in memory to boot up faster, but it also has a copy saved on the hard drive in case the power cut out while it was in sleep mode and you would have lost everything that wasn't saved. That's those 3 sleep options. There's also allow wake timers, and again, battery or when plugged in, and you can either disable it completely or allow this for everything, or just for important wake timers only. So any kind of wake timers, any kind of task that runs on the computer that may be a scheduled task that has an option where you checked on to allow the computer to be woken up for it to run that task. So if you don't want that to happen, you can disable it and enable for everything or only for important timers. That's our sleep settings. Now that we covered the main basic ones that may be cutting out your computer, let's have a look at the other ones. From the top, Internet Explorer, they have a JavaScript timer frequency. The JavaScript timer frequency tells it to use either a power savings or to go full performance, which the performance is for how well it performs when viewing web pages that make use of JavaScript. The desktop background settings, if you have any slideshows, then you have the option of You have the option of either enabling that, making it available, or pausing it so it doesn't run. Wireless adapter settings, you've got power saving mode. So you've got the options of maximum performance or the power saving in low, medium, or maximum. So you can play with those settings, and if you're having any kind of problems with your wireless network card, then you might want to look at changing these settings and play around with them and see if that helps with any wireless issues you might have. USB settings, we've got the selective suspend setting, and this is either enabled or disabled, and what that does is it means that in order to save power, it cuts out the power to USB ports, which it makes a decision intelligently. But sometimes, as we know, Microsoft Windows doesn't always make the most intelligent decisions. So it's up to you if you want to allow this to happen, or if you're having problems with any USB device, maybe you want to disable that feature. With the Intel graphics setting, you have the graphics power plan, and from here you've got the options between maximum battery life or maximum performance, and then something in between. So again, with this, depending on if you want to save battery life or you want to have the best performance with your graphics card, and if you're having any kind of issues with your graphics card, you could try playing around with these settings and see if it helps at all. With the PCI Express, there's a Link State Power Manager, and this here you've got options of either turning it off or having moderate power savings or maximum power savings. And this really are many different devices that may be on your computer, so you might be having an issue with something that's using the PCI slot, and you could try again with these power options here. So that may be a troubleshooting technique for you for any of those devices. Processor power management. If we have a look here, there's minimum processor and maximum processor. If we have a look at these together, you've got the minimum state, which will indicate how much power is okay to go through to the processor when it doesn't really need that much power. It's not running much, so it'll give it a lot less power to save power and save you on battery. So 5% is a good default. And the maximum, of course, if it's going full out, you want to give it 100%. So these are probably fine. And then there is a system cooling policy where you've got either passive or active, and it tells you when you hover over these here that with the passive, it's going to slow down the processor before it increases the fan speed, versus the active, it will increase the fan speed before slowing the processor. So if you want to have a better performance, then you want to have it on active. But if you want to save power, then you can have it in passive, and it'll just slow down the processor, and you will notice a decrease in performance, but you'll be saving some power on that. We already looked at display, so multimedia settings, if we expand that, we see when sharing media and video playback quality and when playing a video. So there's a couple of options here to either allow it to sleep, prevent idling to sleep, or allow the computer to enter always mode. So these options, whether you're on a battery or plugged in, and this is just when sharing media. The video playback and focus on power saving or performance. So again, that's when playing back videos, and you can change that around. And playing videos, you have optimizing the video quality over power, or just something in between. Finally, with the battery, there's a bunch of options here that I think are fairly self-explanatory. The critical notification, you want to have that turned on. It's always a good idea. Critical battery action, it'll go into a hibernate state, so you can change that as well, either between the ones that we discuss: sleep, hibernate, or shut down. Hibernate's a good idea, so that way you won't lose anything that you're working on. The low battery level, it'll consider it low at that percentage that you set it at. Critical battery level, of course, that's when it's below low and it's really critical. You can change that to whatever percentage that you want. Low battery notification, of course, good idea to have that. Low battery action, do nothing. So it'll only be when the critical battery action, but if you want to have something for low battery action, you can change that as well between sleep, hibernate, and shutdown, or just keep it to do nothing. Only when critical, maybe. And then reserving the battery level, you can tell it to consider reserving that and start to go into power saving mode at 7%. And if you found that video helpful, give it a thumbs up, and you maybe want to check out one of these other videos that I have for you. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next one. Bye for now.